More now, we're going to turn on this topic, talking to Stephen Yates. Stephen is a former assistant to Vice President Cheney for National Security Affairs and a distinguished fellow at the Hamilton Foundation. Stephen, thanks so much for joining me.
Happy to be with you, Arthel.
I want to pick up right where Jennifer Griffin left off, and we're talking about, first of all, we know this is good news that Sgt Bergdahl is back in American hands, and there's nothing short of jubilation for that. But let me go here where Jennifer Griffin just left off, and that is the 5 Taliban members who were basically given up in exchange for Sgt Bergdahl. We'll put up the pictures again, and Jennifer is talking, we're talking about top-level Taliban people here. One is the Department Minister of Intelligence, the head of their Department Minister of Intelligence, and then you have someone who is accused of wartime. So talk about who these guys are and how treacherous they are, and the fact that they've been released.
Well, this is a tough call, and I think that it was moving in this direction for some time. It's, of course, wonderful that he's released. It's sad it took 5 years to get it done, but these detainees surely are going to find their way back onto the battlefield in some form or fashion. This is an important reminder that regardless of what our top leaders say, we can't really undeclare this war. It's one that's been declared on us. And so these people are going to go back. Eventually, they're going to spend, as was reported, a year in Qatari custody. But after that, presumably, back to the fight. And so we have to be sure that we have sufficient force on the ground in Afghanistan to protect the Americans who remain from these kinds of individuals and guard against them organizing future attacks.
Okay, do you think that we will have enough troops left after some 20,000 troops come home?
Well, you know, when you look at Bowe Bergdahl's release, it stood in the way of a full withdrawal from Afghanistan. It would have been completely implausible to imagine America withdrawing without getting its last remaining POW out. There's been some question about whether this was the final step for the Obama administration to be able to move to a zero option. They haven't announced that yet. That's not what the president said at West Point. But the trend does seem to be moving in that direction. His focus is on getting out, not accomplishing a mission there any longer.
Well, listen, we cannot talk about it. It's definitely a situation where, you know, you're between a rock and a hard place. It's certainly a conundrum. You want to get our American sergeant out there, the Army sergeant. So, you know, what more could you have done, really?
Well, I think the only thing that more could have been done was it did take a very, very long time to identify his location and work out this release. I mean, it's really sad that it was that long. It's hard to imagine the human toll. But in terms of having to exchange personnel to get his release, I'm not shocked that it took that to get this done.
All right, Stephen, I want to move on to another topic that's happening today, and that is we're talking about an American who carried out a deadly suicide bombing attack in Syria. He's reportedly a 22-year-old man from South Florida, and the State Department, as you know, is saying that he blew up a truck packed with tons of explosives near Syrian troops. It was outside of a restaurant on Sunday, and U.S. officials now expressing a real concern over Americans joining up with al-Qaeda-linked rebel groups. Listen.
I think it's emblematic of the new world that we live in. But it's especially sensitive whenever it is Americans involved, and they are the ones that are getting the training by al-Qaeda.
Yeah, and it is believed to be the first time that an American has been involved in this sort of an attack since the Syrian civil war broke out more than 3 years ago. So, Stephen, how big of a wrench does this throw into the fight, the war on terrorism?
Well, this is not necessarily new in the sense of Americans getting involved. I mean, we had an American involved in the Arabian Peninsula in a key position. We had Americans involved with the Taliban in Afghanistan during the war there. It is new that it's occurring in Syria in this way, but again, it's a reminder that we're in a different kind of environment. This one, I think, raises 2 big questions. One, it's homeland security, about are we doing what we need to identify people most likely to be radicalized this way to go into a fight? And then second, are we doing everything we can to monitor who they are and where they are to make sure they don't come home to do something worse. I mean, we can remember the Boston bombers did something pretty similar.
Yeah, so if I can get this in a concise answer, and two things you mentioned, and I want to pick up, which is, what if these guys do? They have an American passport, although in this case he got rid of his, but what if they do come home and God forbid they commit something like this on American soil? How do we stop them from coming back into this country? And then what about those websites that actually is where some of these guys go to become radicalized? Can we shut those down legally?
That's right. There are civil liberties for American citizens that come involved, but this is really a mission of the DNI and the FBI, and basically covering the gaps that post 9/11 reforms were supposed to cover to make sure that we have all source information to guard against this.
Stephen Yates, a lot to talk about in a short amount of time, but I thank you for staying on top of all of those topics for us. Thanks, Stephen. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.